Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Understanding Our Founding Documents from Penn Public Library. I'm Alex Androsik, the Adult Services Librarian here at PYPL. And today's session is a little bit different. You could take that title, Understanding Our Founding Documents, and say, hey, what's this fast one you're pulling on us here? Because we're actually not dealing with an American document. So in the sense of our founding documents in terms of being citizens of the United States, that's not quite what we're doing today. But in the larger sense, our founding documents as members of the human race, this certainly applies. And the reason for this little change is because today we are celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, which actually started yesterday. It runs from September 15th to October 15th every year. And it is an opportunity for us all to recognize the contributions and influence of Hispanic Americans to our history, culture, and achievements, and in a wider sense, to recognize Hispanic people from all across the world, in fact, for their contributions. So today, we are going to be looking at a document that comes from Bolivia. It's the Bolivian Constitution. And I've chosen this document because, in my opinion, it does a lot of very interesting things in terms of setting up legal ideas and legal precedents for things that would seem very different and unique and unusual from our point of view in the United States, but which I think is really important for us to think about and reflect on. So as I go through this, there's going to be 5 pages, 5 slides of the Bolivian preamble. I split it up that way so there wasn't too much on each slide. So as we've done with these pre-recorded sessions in the past, when I go to a new slide, you can feel free to pause the recording for a moment and take all the time you need if you are participating in the handwriting aspect of this program. As a reminder, this is all inspired by an art project called Handwriting the Constitution, which aims to help us to gain deeper intimacy and understanding of documents through the act of writing them out. So in that original project, it's all about writing out parts of the American Constitution. But as we've gone through different sessions here with this program, we've expanded beyond that to different laws. And today we are expanding, of course, to the Constitution of Bolivia. So again, at each slide, I'll give you an opportunity to pause and take your time to write out the text of this document, and then you can hit play again and we move on to the next one. And then we'll just have a few minutes of discussing some of the elements that come forward in thinking about this document. So without further ado, we will continue here. And so here is the first page, the first slide with the first part of the Bolivian Constitution. So by all means, take a moment, pause, and write out this clause. All right, if you have hit play again, we're continuing. We'll move on to the second section of the Bolivian Constitution's preamble. And again, hit pause for as long as you need to write this out, and then hit play when you're ready. Here's page 3, slide 3 of this preamble to the Bolivian Constitution. I'll pause the recording, write it out, and then rejoin us by hitting play. Here's slide 4. We're almost through the preamble to the Bolivian Constitution. Take a moment, pause the recording, write out this part of the document, and then hit play to rejoin us. And finally, here is the 5th and final slide with the preamble to the Bolivian Constitution. So again, for the last time, you can hit pause on this and rejoin us by hitting play when you are ready. All right, so hopefully you had a good time exploring just this very first taste of the Bolivian Constitution. Just like our preamble of the American Constitution, this is only the beginning of a long and complex legal document, but also like our preamble, it really sort of lays out some of the fundamental principles that the drafters of this Constitution thought were important. So what leapt out at you from this text? Feel free to take a moment if you want to pause the recording again to think about it and jot down some of your ideas about what struck you the most out of those 5 slides about the preamble. I have a few ideas of my own that I came up with just thinking about it and also doing some research about where some of the big debates and discussions in the Bolivian among the Bolivian people came from. So one thing that leapt out to me was this recognition of formation and common ownership of the natural environment. They refer to it in that possessive pronoun our. It's not something that exists separate from us. It's not something that some people own and others don't. It is our natural environment. And I found it very interesting that it even went through sort of a little taste of the process of the geologic formations of this natural environment. Another idea that leapt out at me is the recognition of plurality and diversity, that there are many groups that make up the Bolivian people. And this constitution is for all of them, not for one group or another, not for one racial group or another, one class or another. And it specifically ascribes racism to colonialism and describes it as an unnatural development. So it's very different from something you would see certainly in constitutions written in earlier periods. And I suppose I should mention that this constitution that Bolivia has enacted is a very new document. This is not something that dates back to the 1700s like ours does, or even the 1800s like many of the European constitutions. This was within the past decade or so that this was drafted and adopted. So you can see some of the differences in ideas and ideals that reflects. Another idea or concept that leapt out at me is going along with that idea of plurality and diversity. This document recognizes the martyrs from throughout the history of Bolivia's anti-colonial struggles and wars. It calls that out specifically and raises up folks who have given their lives in the pursuit of kind of shaking off colonial rule in ways that other constitutions may not. And you can see a reflection of this in the American system, not really the Constitution necessarily, but in the way we venerate our revolutionary heroes. I mean, that's certainly a very similar idea as far as soldiers and generals and politicians and statesmen and things who literally shook off colonial rule on the part of the British. But this feels like it goes farther than that. And it's about more than just the generals and presidents and things like that. It's all of the common people who suffered and struggled for greater independence for the Bolivian people. I quoted this section, a state based on respect and equality for all, on principles of sovereignty, dignity, interdependence, solidarity, harmony, and equity in the distribution and redistribution of the social wealth, where the search for a good life predominates. And this concept of the good life is one of the most intriguing elements that this constitution has introduced to the legal and political framework of this nation. We have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that's been a topic that has been reframed and debated and questioned and argued and redefined and celebrated. And I suppose you could say that this question about the good life may have a similar place in the Bolivian cultural mindset in decades to come. But it kind of does lay it out a little more specifically than our life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness does. You know, these principles are very clear and are very progressive in nature. Kind of going along with all of this, the document as a whole rejects colonial, Republican, and neoliberal structures. And please do note that those are Republican and neoliberal with small r, small l. These aren't political parties, but political structures. And that could be a whole discussion in itself about what these things mean. But they certainly found it important enough to call these out specifically in the preamble to their constitution. Here's an important one. The document holds women up alongside men. It doesn't refer to just human beings as a single mass identified by that word men, the way so many documents created in bygone days do. And, here in America, the United States, we at least pay lip service to the idea that, of course, when we say all men are created equal, well, we mean all people. But, in fact, that has never been the case, whether it's women versus people who identify as men, or Black folks versus white folks, and so on. There have always been people who have not been well served by our system, and that's true in other nations around the world, certainly not limited to us. And I have to wonder, and maybe you wonder too, whether coming out and using more equitable, more inclusive language in a founding document like this reverberates through the culture of a nation. And so by mentioning women in this document, will that make a difference over time in terms of how women are treated and viewed in Bolivian culture? Maybe that's an overly optimistic way of thinking. Maybe it'll make a difference. Time will tell. In the same way, you see in this entire document evidence of the ways of thinking and structures of life of the indigenous people of Bolivia, South America. I see a spelling error here that's embarrassing, so I apologize for that. But, it's a perspective that is threaded through this entire document in a way that is certainly not the case in many of the long-standing democracies. We talk about how you could draw a parallel between America's independence, the United States independence from Britain, as being a throwing off of colonialism, and Bolivia's efforts to throw off colonialism. But did we just take over that colonial structure in regards to people who were not, wealthy white male landowners? Do we have the indigenous point of view in our most fundamental documents? I would say no. Perhaps others would find evidence pointing elsewhere. But certainly in this document, that indigenous way of thinking comes through very strongly. And you can see that in particular in the inclusion of the concept of Pachamama, which is referenced right here in this document. And that is an indigenous conception of the idea of Mother Earth, of a embodiment, a humanization and anthropomorphization of nature itself as a living being deserving of rights in itself. And that is a very indigenous point of view, and one that is lacking from a lot of the founding documents of other societies. So what has been the impact of this constitution? Like I said, it has not been around for very long. So the jury is still out. But I think it's clear that there's great potential to reshape the popular view of the role and scope of the government because of these different points of view that it encompasses, because of the different language it uses, because of the inclusivity that's baked right into it. But as I indicated before, it's difficult to say to what extent it is feasible to expect this to have a major difference. There are some limiting factors that legal scholars in Bolivia and around the world have pointed out to what's possible within the scope of this constitution. The constitution, as you go along through it, beyond the preamble, you see there is a strong executive, and that is viewed by experts as a limiting factor to the ideals espoused in the preamble. This sort of this ethos of the people and of equality and equity that can be sometimes challenged by strong executives in any system. Unfortunately, there are some indications of the exclusion of dissident views baked into the Constitution, so that's never good. Beyond the document itself, it is noted that there is deep-rooted social inequality in Bolivia that will make it harder to enact some of these ideals. There's some conservative opposition, and along with all of the good talk about honoring the earth and creating a more sustainable society from that point of view, the economic model that we are all living under, which is certainly not any different in Bolivia, is very resource dependent. And so that means that until we change some of that, the way we live is still dependent on pulling things out of the ground and cutting down trees and producing food in ways that are not necessarily healthy and safe for the long-term sustainability of the environment. So all of these things can limit the potential impacts of the Constitution. But as these researchers, Schilling and Vaca-Flor, say, the processes around the elaboration of a new basic law have contributed to considerable changes in the social, political, and symbolic order. So just by elaborating or putting words to this new basic structure of the law has already had some important impacts that we'll hopefully continue to see in the future. And of course, this concept of living well, the good life, contributes to a sense of the importance of health and the environment to the people of Bolivia, which evidently exists already, and hopefully by enshrining it in the law, we'll continue to just see it growing and burgeoning for the people of that country and maybe the region and eventually the world. Just say quickly about another item here. The law of Mother Earth is actually a law, from what I understand, that has been proposed in Bolivia. So this, I believe, is separate from the Constitution, but underneath the Constitution, there is this law of Mother Earth that has been proposed, which would define Mother Earth, or that Pachamama concept, as a collective subject of public interest. So in a way, granting a form of personhood to the earth, and declares both Mother Earth and life systems, which combine human communities and ecosystems, as title holders of inherent rights specified in the law. And it creates an office, a person whose job it is to try to enforce the rights of this subject of public interest. Defensori de la Madre Tierra, the defender of Mother Earth. And I don't believe that this law has been passed. I believe it is just kind of a proposal that is out there, but it would guarantee to Mother Earth the rights to life, to the diversity of life, to water, air, equilibrium, so balance between one factor and another, to restoration, and to live free of contamination. And imagine if we all thought of the earth as a living being in some way, or not even a living being, but just a corporate entity, if you will, deserving of these rights in the same way we've given other kinds of corporate entities rights over, voting and contributing to political campaigns and what they can and can't do to the planet. Just imagine putting the environment on equal footing with such entities. How powerful is that? If you'd like to read more about this Constitution and the law of the rights of Mother Earth, I will put all of these resources in the description of this video. I do hope you will read more about it, dig more into this Constitution. There's so much that is very interesting about it. And maybe it will lead you to learning about the history and structures of some of the other nations of Latin America. And that is a really good way to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, just to learn about the people and the structures that contribute to the vast landscape that exists out there of the Hispanic identity, both in our country and around the world. So I hope you do that. I hope you enjoyed learning about the Constitution of Bolivia today. And I hope we'll see you again next month for our next session of understanding our founding documents. Thanks very much. Have a good month.